Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We're coming to you at a special time at 2 o'clock because my guest is a very important man and he has lots of meetings back to back. And when you can get him on the show, you get him on the show. And that's Dr. Shawn Baker. We're going to be talking to him in just a minute. We're going to talk to him about a study that came from, I think it was called the Boston Consulting Group, that then became a subject of articles, newspaper articles, saying that that an investment in alternate protein sources, plant-based meat predominantly, would be good for the climate. And you know, I am so frustrated today because lying has become the standard. There are a lot of people in government, in the media, that would have done well to get a slap in the face when they told a lie by their parents, because they probably would be different people today. I know I did. My father had a big hand. But lying and misrepresenting the facts is commonplace today, and people don't care, because if it fits their narrative, they're great. Oh, look, you know, this is the way it is. But we have to try to get to the bottom, and we have to try to free the truth, because millions of people's lives and health are at stake. We're going to get into that in just a second. I want to thank my title sponsor, Legendary Foods, for making the amazing tasty pastry. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, 4 to 5 net carbs. It is basically a Pop-Tart reimagined. You'll love it. You'll eat it because it tastes great, not just because it fits your dietary guidelines. shrnetwork.biz/legendary, and the code is SHR10 to let them know that you learned about it here on Superhuman Radio. And now, my guest, Dr. Shawn Baker. How you doing?
Yeah, Carl, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I texted you this study when I first read it, and I'm sure you got wind of it from a lot of other people. What was your first impulse?
Well, like you'd mentioned, I mean, there is a lot of, propaganda masquerading as science. And, as we know, I mean, science can be wildly affected by conflict of interest. There's a narrative being there, and you can, depending upon the metrics you want to measure, you can craft any story you want. And I think one of the things they do here is, we can get X amount of calories or X amount of greenhouse gases, and that's the end of the story. And that doesn't tell the story. We should be talking about what is the actual nutrition we're talking about, because food is more than just calories. The most effective greenhouse gas friendly thing to grow, quite honestly, is sugar. Sugar is the most, you can grow the most calories if you just grow pure sugar. Now, no one would suggest we eat a pure sugar diet, but this is effectively some version of this. When we look at comparing, meat or beef in particular, and we start to calculate things based on what's actually in the food outside of how many calories or how many grams of protein we have to start talking about essential amino acids, lysine contents, leucine contents. We have to talk about bioavailability. We have to talk about things like zinc and some of these other things. And so there's studies that have been done looking at, if we all went plant-based, we would have to consume more calories and we would have significant nutrient deficiencies. And so this is a way to make a lot of cheap, highly centralized, industrialized food products that you can sell at a nice profit at the expense of making everyone sick. And another thing that's not talked about is, if we're worried about greenhouse gases, and there's some people that think that's overblown anyway, but if we're worried about that, then we have to talk about what about sick people? Well, the U.S. healthcare system puts out 5 times as much greenhouse gas as do cows in this country.
Really?
Yeah, the U.S. healthcare system is 10% of our greenhouse gases. Cows in the United States put out 2% of our greenhouse gases. And so if we're just going to create more overweight, sick, zombified people that are on countless medications and requiring all kinds of medical support, we're actually making things worse. And this is something that, again, this is not talked about because no one bothers to look at the big picture here. It's just these very reductionist arguments to serve a narrative. And this narrative is basically at great benefit. We're trying to create this alternative meat market, and they want to get, they want to get something like 20-25% of the market in the next 10-15 years, which is, you're talking $300 billion. I mean, that's a huge, there's a lot of financial interest in this. You see people that do some bad things for a few bucks. When you got $300 billion on the line, there's a lot of, malfeasance that can occur.
It's funny because we've done shows about protein quality and amino acid pools and how important that is when we're looking at a protein in particular. And nothing compares to beef. And I find it interesting, to put politely, that no discussions. So you would imagine that the only transgression when it comes to global warming, climate change, whatever name they're going to call it in the next decade, it's always about beef. But you just said that the healthcare system is responsible for 10% of the greenhouse gases, right?
Yeah.
Do you know that the agriculture business, the business of agriculture, between pesticides and fuel and everything that goes along with it, is responsible for 30% of greenhouse gases? That is a phenomenally big number that no one talks about, because now we have this demonized kale. It's like, oh, well, I mean, just growing our vegetables and everything that entails is responsible for 30% of greenhouse gases. But more importantly, 1 billion pounds of pesticides and herbicides are sprayed every year just in the United States. They go up in the air, okay? 5 billion globally. Everybody's talking about, we did our first show on forever chemicals. I looked it up 4 years ago. PFOAs and PFAs and, these polyfluoroalkyline agents, they're now being found in rainwater. According to a study that was done just recently in Germany, they're saying that rainwater is no longer safe to drink. That's not from cows. That's from the sprayed pesticides and herbicides that become atomized and vaporized and go up into the air and get caught in the clouds. And now they're raining down on us. Why isn't anyone talking? Why are they always picking on friggin' cows? I just can't get over it. I mean, I'm really frustrated. So I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but it's like no one talks about just growing vegetables, which is worse.
Well, I mean, certainly in the U.S., most people don't realize this, but plant agriculture puts out more greenhouse gases than animal agriculture. That's very well documented within the EPA. And I think if we're talking about things like pesticides and others, studies on other things most people are aware of, glyphosate, the Roundup stuff, and we're finding that is showing up in fairly significant levels. I think I did a study in France that showed something like 90% of the urine samples in France had detectable levels of glyphosate in that. And so these things are happening, and what the impact is they'll say, well, it doesn't affect mammalian biology, but it affects our gut microbiome perhaps. And so there's issues, downstream from that. And interestingly, if you look at foods that contain high levels of glyphosate, it's usually grains and legumes. These are the same things that they're going to be putting into these Impossible Burgers and these Beyond Burgers, the things that they already do. And meat, milk, things like that don't really contain it. It gets processed out. So I mean, there's a lot of different nuance here, but I think it's I think clearly the answer is who's gonna stand a profit from this stuff, and it's not just the food companies that can make a cheap product. Anytime I see made with plants or plant powered, all I think that means to me is this is a cheap product that's going to be very profitable. This means you just translate in your mind cheap and profitable. And it's not just the manufacturers, but it's also the entire U.S. healthcare system and the pharmaceutical industry that's it just benefits from the status quo. The more obese, the more sick, the more depressed people we have, the more money there is to make. And I don't think they're interested in truly addressing and fixing that issue. They, like I said, it seems like they prefer everybody just to be sick, passive, compliant, and consuming this stuff that's not good for us.
So the Impossible Burger has failed, right? Haven't all the fast food restaurants pulled their plant-based meat experiments?
A lot of them. McDonald's was doing an experiment with Beyond Meat, and they looked in their U.S. markets and found it was a very, very lukewarm acceptance, and so they pulled it at least temporarily. They've had a little bit of success in Europe, but in the United States, these places are really they're I mean, these companies pay a lot of money to get it on the menu as a trial, and for the most part, almost every place that's done it has taken it off the menu. They've just said it just hasn't sold. So people aren't interested in this. This is not consumer pull. This is corporate push. This is venture capital push for this stuff. Nobody wants this garbage. I mean, there's nobody putting their hand up and says, "Hey, please make this ultra processed, highly industrialized human pet food for me to eat to replace meat." No one's asking for that. They're just trying to push it out there, and there's this huge marketing, science masquerading as propaganda, celebrities being paid to, you get Kim Kardashian up there pretending to eat a burger. I mean, they're basically these people are just being, hoard out for this stuff, basically.
Right. And the people who follow them, I'm surprised how many people aren't aware of things that we are aware of. But the fact that people will, look, we know processed foods are bad, whether they are, processed meats or processed plant-based foods. It's still processed. I don't understand how the majority of people have fallen for this scam. Do they just don't know, or is it just that the propaganda is so effective?
I think it's a combination. Some people don't know. I think everybody intuitively knows if I'm eating a bunch of cake every day, it's not good for me. I think we kind of in the background know it, but it is. These companies have perfected, with their food scientists, the art of, the bliss point, as Moskowitz did in the 1970s. It's that perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat. And they just make this stuff. And the interesting thing, I thought this was fascinating. So there was an article published looking at obesity rates in the United States for the last 20 years. Anyone that's got a pair of eyeballs has seen we've gotten fatter and fatter and fatter. But our caloric consumption over the last 20 years has not actually increased. That was true from the 1960s to the 1990s or so. But since that time, our caloric consumption has been even on a downward trend slightly, and yet we're getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And the thought is we're eating all of this quote unquote acellular food, which is basically powders. Anytime you turn food into powder, which is not how you and I are designed to eat food. Carl, if you and I were in the wilderness, we would never run across powder. We could not make powder, with our own hands and any primitive tools we had. So the fact that we're eating powders and concentrated oils and liquid sugar is just disastrous for our physiology. Not how we're designed to consume food. And anytime you take powders and mix it together and turn it into a Beyond Burger, which is basically powdered pea protein and some soybean oil or something like that, or canola oil, it's just a disaster for us metabolically.
Yeah, because acellular, I did a show years and years ago about acellular carbohydrates that feed the microbiome before they feed us. And we just did a show about 3 amino acids that feed multiple sclerosis. And we're not getting those amino acids by eating hamburger meat. You know what I mean? Because that stuff digests further down than in the stomach. So these have to be readily available in some sort of isolate type capacity, because the bugs in our gut are eating them and they're triggering multiple sclerotic lesions. And so more and more of this stuff today, out of convenience, is in fact, like you're saying, it all starts with powder. And it's scary. It's scary what's happening to the population. Would you agree with me, and this is me saying it, that there's a high level of high-functioning mentally ill people in our population today. I mean, they can hold a job, they can get the train to work and back, but there's something missing from their ability to rationalize or think critically. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, fully 20% of the population right now has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. I mean, that's 20%. 1 out of 5 people has an active diagnosis. How many people have these subclinical diagnoses is probably quite a bit more than that. And so, yes, I mean, most of our people can't think well. They have problems cognitively. They have problems emotionally. And we see this in society where everyone is mad at each other. Everybody's divided. Everybody's angry. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's scared. Everybody wants to be violent. That's not a healthy society. And if we continue down this track, it's going to continue to get worse. And nutrition plays a tremendously important role in this, for sure.
And that's where I was going with this. I love when you post the extreme vegans, how they transform from healthy looking people to skeletons with skin, and their eyes are like crazy people. And I say, I just said this to Elisa. I said, severe nutrient deficiencies cause severe signs of mental illness, but moderate nutrient deficiencies could just be ADHD or behavioral problems. People don't understand. They think because they're eating something that they're healthy, but it's like we're really missing the boat. And I'm bringing this up. So I did a show probably 10 years ago about a doctor who published a study where they looked at the high intake of omega 6 and 9 oils in fast food restaurants and food deserts in the inner city, and the rate of violence. And she was making a point that the people who are eating the highly inflammatory oils tend to be more prone to violence. And I mean, we have a problem today, and no one is paying attention to it. And I really think it is diet driven.
Well, I mean, yes, I think diet has a huge role. I mean, you should talk to a guy named Chris Palmer out of Harvard. He's a psychiatrist, is doing tremendous research, and they're showing that things like bipolar disorder, severe depression, schizoaffective disorder are all being reversed with, like things like ketogenic diets. And that's important. But I think not only are we starting to normalize obesity and some of these mental health disorders, we're starting to actually even celebrate them. It's in the guise of inclusion and difference and celebrate your craziness. But I mean, that's really a problem. And it's, the people that are behind this, in my view, are basically evil people that are just sort of dragging society and killing and maiming either, figuratively or literally millions and millions of people along this path. And so, I think we have to, address the fact that nutrition is probably driving the majority of this.
It's really sad. I mean, the movie Idiocracy, I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, it really turned out to be a prophecy, didn't it? I mean, it's like, I don't know who this guy was who wrote that script, but he was brilliant.
Yeah, you can definitely see a lot of parallels there coming on. And something, I feel like sometimes we're living in this dystopian Monty Python skit. Sometimes, it's just kind of like it's every week there's something where you think humans have reached a new level of idiocy, and we just keep exceeding that. It's just amazing where we're going.
It's really sad. We've had Will Harris on the show numerous times from White Oak Pastures, and he has had a study done on his farm, and they have not only do they have a zero carbon footprint, but they have a negative carbon footprint. And he's been actually calling out Bill Gates vocally. I mean, he's actually been doing some posts and stuff like that. Why isn't that a saleable a message? Why can't we get that message out that it can be done right? We don't have to abandon raising animals, and it actually can benefit the planet more so than even conventional agriculture.
Well, I mean, I think it's the people that stand to make the most money have a lot of, they have a lot of capital. I mean, when you have companies like Google and PepsiCo and Nestle, these multi-billion dollar companies trying to put out a different message, and so they can have this unlimited generational millennial wealth for them and their heirs. I mean, they're not interested in these other discussions. It's they're attacked or demonized. They say it won't work when clearly people are demonstrating. It's the same thing with. I mean, it's much easier. I mean, the nice thing I can say about health is I don't need a scientist to tell me if I'm healthy or not. I can look in the mirror and discover that myself. So it's a pretty easy thing for me to do on an individual level. But when you tell me the climate is warming up or cooling down, or there's more storms or less storm, I really can't tell. I mean, I can't go outside and verify it. I have to listen to somebody to tell me that. So it's a tougher argument. It's a tougher, it's a much easier argument to make. And I think that's why we've seen this shift, because this belief that we're going to go plant-based. There's so many people that can confirm that is not actually correct in their own lives. They can confirm that. They can literally say, I felt like garbage when I was eating this way. I switched to more a animal-centered way of eating, and my health got better. It's absolutely clear to me. But when we're talking about politics or the latest, whatever thing that's out there and this climate change stuff, it's whoever has the biggest microphone. And like I said, Carl, you and I just don't have the bandwidth that the CEO of Google has, right?
Right. And the whole climate change argument is disingenuous for a couple reasons. Number one, climate has been our arch nemesis since the beginning of time. The planet cooled. We had 40,000 years of total ice ages. The planet heated up. The planet has been warmer than it is today. The planet has been colder than it is. Now, I do not disagree that humans are contributing in some way to some changes, let's say, in the climate. But no one is going to do anything until China, Russia, and India get involved, because like if the United States stopped producing any of these villainous gases and things that are going to change climate, it's not going to change the planetary climate, because the biggest offenders are China, Russia, and India, and they have no desire to stop polluting. So this is nonsense. To me, it's nonsense.
Well, I mean, particularly when we talk about, again, removing cows from the equation, because if you look at, like world cattle population, world cattle population is down by about 100 million cows over the last 30 years. We've got less cows than we had in 1980 or 1989. And yet methane has gone up. India, by the way, which most people don't realize, is India has the most cattle on the planet. India basically doesn't eat meat, or it's illegal to eat meat. They have 300 million head of cattle, 200 million cows, another 100 million water buffalo. The United States only has 90 million. And so when we're talking about what are we going to do to make cows more efficient, that's a place you would want to start. We've got it pretty good here in the United States. I mean, it's there's a lot of hypocrisy, and there's a lot of just nonsense around this whole thing. And I agree. I mean, if nothing else, even if you say climate change is not something that we can significantly impact as human beings, that's down to volcanic activity and solar activity, which a lot of people make that argument. You could still say, well, there's a lot of pollution. I mean, no one likes to go to the beach and see a bunch of friggin' Coke bottles washed up on the shore. And we see that in even little deserted islands across the world. You go there and you watch some of these shows, and they've got friggin' plastic bottles washing up on the shore. So we could address those things. And going on a plant-based diet, or one of these diets where they're just generating enormous amounts of plastics, is not helping it either. That's another thing most people don't talk about.
Plastics in general.
Yeah.
I remember George Carlin did a great skit once. Maybe the planet wanted us to make plastic. It was funny. It was very humorous. I want to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll pick up this discussion. We're talking with Dr. Sean Baker. What can we plug for you today? I know that you have your website. You have that Rivero. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Rivero.com. You can check that out. That's where we're we're going to change health. We're changing healthcare. We're going to change the whole paradigm and, do what we're supposed to do.
And that's what I want to talk about when we come back. I want to talk about some of the stuff that you're seeing now with people who are going carnivore. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. The Hercules Pre-Workout from Lost Empire Herbs is like no pre-workout you have ever had before. Completely natural formula designed specifically to optimize workouts, provide quicker recovery time, provide adequate nutrition, and get you away from all those no-good, overstimulating pre-workout supplements on the market today. The Hercules Pre-Workout blend is a mix of extracted natural herbs and mineral pitch. No fake colors, no added flavors, nothing else. Not only will Hercules Pre-Workout formula help your workouts, but you'll likely discover lots and lots of side effects, beneficial side effects. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lostempire today to learn more. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. I think we can put this idea that plant-based meats are not going to affect the planet. And I don't know who this Boston group was that wrote this study, but they obviously had an issue. They had an agenda that when they wrote this paper. But let's talk more about the success that people are seeing with the carnivore diet. When you did my first show, you had just won a powerlifting. I won a deadlift competition, and you talked about N equals many, which was your first website, right? That's where it all started, right?
Yeah.
Did you see that becoming this?
In a way, I mean, I knew there was something there, and I knew that this was not something that I was just sort of making up. So I saw the potential to where we are now, and certainly where we're going. I mean, we're nowhere near done. We've got a lot of work to do, and I think we're going to be honestly affecting the lives of millions and millions of people. And I think we have I think most of us, and particularly over the last couple of years, most of us have kind of lost trust in the system for a number of reasons. I think a lot of people are skeptical about, what we're being told about different things. I think we have doubts between what's happening with healthcare and whose interests are being served in this stuff. And besides that, so what I find is that, the healthcare system, when it comes to chronic disease in this country, has largely been a failure, and we're not very efficient with our money. We spend $3.5 trillion as of a couple of years ago. It's probably much more than that now with inflation, some of these other things. So it's $4 trillion a year on healthcare, and not getting much for it. And it's not helping people. People are frustrated. People are tired, and so I think we're going to see. And we're not the only company doing this. There are other companies out there. They're all seeing the same thing, that we're not, the healthcare system is broken. We can continue to pour money into it. We can continue to develop technology to continue to put, basically I call them just expensive Band-Aids on everything. I mean,
Right.
It's just Band-Aid everything. And we need to get more focused on actually treating disease, curing disease. I know that seems like a dirty word. It's a 4-letter word these days, but curing disease is something that we should be doing as physicians. And I think we have it within our capacity to do so for a lot of things. I see it literally every day. I mean, it's not that it's theoretical, it's practical. It's occurring in real time every single day. And we just have to get people to have the courage to try this. I'm talking both from a patient standpoint, but also from a physician standpoint. And thankfully, more and more are doing that. But it's still a vastly vast minority of the people that are willing to try this.
So, off the top of your head, can you rattle off a couple recent success? Because I know people send you messages and they're thanking you profusely. I've had these issues for 15 years, and I've done carnivore for the past 2 years or year and a half, and I'm healthy again. And any recent wins that you come to the top of your head?
I'm seeing a lot of mental health disorders, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, depression. We've had Tourette syndrome. We've had borderline personality disorder. So a lot of mental health disorders. And part of that is it's becoming so common. Common things are commonly treated. So obviously, weight loss is pretty common, but we see a lot of particularly inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, also colitis. I mean, this should be the standard of care, first line treatment for anybody diagnosed with that. I mean, it pains me to see little kids, 10, 11-year-old kids being diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And I mean, they're put on these high dollar biologics very early on. And I mean, literally a dietary change could remarkably and dramatically change the outcome of the course of their life. Avoiding, bowel resections and millions and thousands of dollars in medications for one individual. So yeah, these things. I mean, it's almost what hasn't been helped by this. I mean, arthritis, psoriasis, eczema, all the mental health disorders, the hypothyroidism, skin.
How about there's a big problem in our population with peripheral neuropathy, and it was once called diabetic peripheral neuropathy, but there are people who don't have any of the markings of type 2 diabetes that are developing these problems. How about that?
That's an interesting question. And yes, I've seen a number of people improving both diabetic neuropathy and non-diabetic neuropathy. It was interesting when I was practicing as an orthopedic surgeon, I was getting people with carpal tunnel syndrome, and I was sort of curious the impact of metabolic health had on it. So I was ordering fasting insulins on people with carpal tunnel syndrome, and almost without exception, everybody that had carpal tunnel syndrome had very high levels of insulin. And so we can see that there is this metabolic component that shows up in these various neurological or orthopedic manifestations. And so much of that, again, arthritis, tendonitis, peripheral neuropathy, these are all consequences of metabolic disease and by extension by nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aiden Ray has a good question, and I this is, people always say, oh, if you eat the same thing over and over again, you'll develop an allergic reaction to it. How do you all recommend dealing with development of food intolerances after continued copious consumption of the same foods, i.e., eggs, and still maintain macros on whole food? What, more importantly, do you see any people become allergic to beef from eating it every day, day in and day out?
I have not seen that. I know that there are people that do develop intolerances to other foods, but beef has not been one of them that I've seen. Now, what I've seen often is the opposite case, where I've seen people that were previously lactose intolerant, they go on a carnivore diet for 6 months, and all of a sudden they're better able to tolerate some dairy. I've actually seen people, which is really interesting, that have had anaphylactic reactions to things like shellfish. And I don't know why they test this again, because it would seem to be you don't want to test it, but they found that they no longer have an anaphylactic response after they fixed their gut from that thing. And so I think that, if you do have a food that is causing a reaction after you eat massive amounts of, say, eggs, because I have seen people become sensitized to eggs, and I honestly, I had an issue with that for about 3 months where eggs were causing me some digestive issues. I took it out of my diet for about 6 months and then reintroduced it, and it was fine. So sometimes it's a matter of, just kind of cutting back for a while.
And then Aiden Ray also said that he read somewhere that recently read a great anecdotal efficacy of parents helping their children with autism by doing the carnivore diet. Have you seen that as well?
Well, in fact, I just did an interview this morning with a mom who's done the very exact same thing. And so she had a child who was on a standard American diet. He was nonverbal, could only communicate with grunts, laying on the floor, flapping around. Went on a carnivore diet, and now he's a 7-year-old in a normal school with normal acting in a play. And so, does it cure autism? I don't think so. Can it significantly impact, some of the stereotypic behaviors? Absolutely. And I've seen that not only with that child, but with many, many, many other children. So a lot of times autism is associated with gut disorders. And I think particularly in those kids, dietary interventions do have some efficacy. Now, like I said, not everybody's going to, go from completely nonverbal to normally function, but we can impact the severe disease undoubtedly with nutrition.
The medical orthodoxy isn't interested in curing anything. So to come back to what you said a little while ago. And that was very evident to me the 2 times that I had Dale Bredesen on my show talking about Alzheimer's. He was very cautious about saying that his protocol was curing Alzheimer's. He said, now, I can't use the word cure because we're not able to test, can't do a biopsy of somebody's brain and see if the plaque is gone. But I remember it was very poignant, that moment. They're like, wow, this guy is afraid to say that I'm curing Alzheimer's. He says, these people are symptom free. And so that's all he could say was, reverse the symptoms of Alzheimer's. And that showed me that they don't want anyone to use the word cure, because that threatens their whole house of cards, because they don't cure anything. They just mask symptoms. That's all the drugs do, is mask symptoms. Surgeons fix shit. Surgeons cure. You got a broken leg, a surgeon will cure your broken leg, But by and large, the rest of medicine is not about curing anything. It's startling to me.
It's disease management, and I like to call it disease maintenance, because all we're interested in doing is maintaining people in a state of disease and modifying their symptoms. And I think that's what we do. That's what the whole pharmaceutical model is based upon. And, it's something I think Goldman Sachs did an analysis about, talking about curing disease. It's not a sustainable business model. And, that's what we've gotten. And to think that, I cannot remember the last time people have talked about a cure. I mean, occasionally we hear some stuff about a cure for cancer because it never happens. But do people talk about a cure for depression, a cure for arthritis, or any of these things? We don't really hear that in anything. This is something you might have heard 50 years ago, but now that language, that terminology has been almost eradicated from the lexicon of modern medicine. It just doesn't exist. I mean, like you said, when I would fix someone's broken bone, I never said I cured your broken bone. I mean, it just wasn't part of my vocabulary. And it's sad. I think that should be what we're trying, whether we achieve it or not. That should be a goal, or the goal for a lot of people.
Yeah, that should be the goal. That should be the goal. Curing, and it's startling to me. Well, I guess I'm naive, but it's startling to me that doctors go to school that is highly influenced by the pharmaceutical industry, and they don't ask that question. What am I curing? I'm not curing anything. They don't even ask the question.
Yeah, it's all treatment. It's treat, not cure. And it is a shame. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of diseases are in fact curable. And I mean, depending on how you want to use that word, there's a lot of semantics here. But I mean, from what I care about, or what a patient would care about, is I no longer have the negative things that are bothering me from whatever diseases, whether it's diabetes or arthritis or depression. If that's no longer there, that's what's the important thing for the patient. Whether you want to call it cured or remission or symptom free, ultimately it doesn't matter. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the goal should be that, not just masking symptoms with ever and ever increasing types and dosages of medications.
The gut is really the source of a lot of diseases, and it's not treated by doctors by and large. We know that proton pump inhibitors lead to heart failure and dementia because it turns out there's proton pumps in other parts of the body. I want to talk about the stomach specifically, the gut specifically, and autoimmunity. Because last time I had you on the show, I know that you were developing a database, but I'm just want you to maybe tell me, are there any early risers in the database that seem to come up over and over again when we talk about plant-based foods and autoimmunity? Let's take this last commercial break. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Shawn Baker. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. There have been no new innovations in men's underwear for hundreds of years. That's all about to change with Sheath. Sheath creates 2 separate compartments for your man stuff so it doesn't get smashed into a mound and sweaty and stinky. I won't wear any other underwear now that I've learned about Sheath, and you won't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Sheath underwear. That's SHEATHUNDERWEAR. Use code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off. I promise you, once you try a pair of Sheath underwear, you will never wear anything else. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order, restore, sell, and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on Earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. That's BODYECO. And using the code SHR20.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. I'm captivated here. I just got an email from Carrie Gillum. She follows the FDA, the EPA, and the glyphosate story. And she's been writing a lot about Bayer and what they're trying to do to get around being prosecuted. She just wrote that new research out of the FDA says 59% of all foods have chemical pesticide residue. Not all produce, because 77% of fruits and 60% of vegetables, but 59% of all food. They tested 2,000 and change, and they have this. I remember someone telling me about glyphosate. Oh, it's not dangerous. I says, if it's not dangerous, I want to do something. I want to come to your house every morning, and you and your wife and kids come to the door. I want to put one drop on your tongue, just one drop on your tongue every day, and do that for like a year, and let's see what happens. Because people don't understand these standards created by the FDA and the EPA are standalone standards, like for this compound, for that compound. But you're getting 60 and 70 times that, because all the foods you're eating are containing them. We have a problem with we have no idea. We have no idea what these chemicals are doing to the population. And I mean, if you're buying processed foods, here we go again, something in a box, with the label and a bunch of ingredients on it, you're getting pesticides. Even if you painstakingly buy your kale is organic.
Well, I mean, when we look at how they examine these foods and they get this, GRAS, designation, generally recognized as safe designation. I mean, they're looking at acute effects. Does it cause immediate DNA breaks? Does it cause acute toxicity? But beyond that, we don't know if it causes autoimmune issues. We don't know if it causes mental health disorders. We don't know if it causes arthritis. We don't know if it causes really a lot of things. We just don't know.
Right.
And, we're getting more and more novel foods brought in every single year. There's something new. I mean, the FDA has just approved cotton for human consumption. We've got these, Beyond Meat or Impossible burgers with this soy leg hemoglobin that humans have never eaten before. They want us to eat, bugs, which, full of chitin. We don't know how humans, a lot of people have sensitivities to chitin. We have all these parasites in bugs. Something like 80% of bugs contain parasites. when they examine these things. So we've got all these things we really don't know. We are the experiment. We are the phase 3 trial basically for this stuff.
So we talked last time that, and I believe strongly that all autoimmune disorders are tied somehow to plant-based foods, whether they trigger them, whether they really cause the breakdown in the gut that leads to it. Have you found any constant hits in the database that you're creating? Any top 3 that seem to be problematic plant-based foods?
Well, we haven't, like I said, we haven't analyzed all the data yet. We're building the AI algorithms to do that right now. But what I see is, typically we see things that are commonly ingredients in ultra-processed foods, whether they are some of these, novel oils, the seed oils that are new to the human diet, some of the sugars, and a lot of the refined grains are probably the top. So basically the ingredients for a donut are probably the most likely to cause problems. But then beyond that, we do see people with certain different categories of plants that are problematic, and it might be nightshade vegetables. It might be, some of these other issues which just show up. We know for an instance, just on an epidemiologic study, which doesn't prove anything, but the association is there. Women by far get more autoimmune diseases than men, and women by far tend to eat more vegetables than men. I mean, that's clear. The data is there.
And they try to make us eat them too. Come on, you got to eat this. They got the colors in it. I'm like, no, I don't want it. Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason you don't like them as a kid, I think. I mean, you have to be sort of conditioned to eat those things. You learn to like it, right? That's something that they say.
Good point. Craig Hollander here. Last thing, we'll get to it. Craig Hollander said, and I don't know who this is, the Carnivore MD has recently added honey and tropical fruits to his carnivore diet. He did this due to his thyroid being adversely affected by meat and organ alone. This is actually more in line with Dr. Ray Peat's protocol. Nothing new or original. Dr. Peat has recommended this since the 70s. You're not like you can't eat fruit. You never said that, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not very dogmatic about it. What I will say is there are people that do not do well with adding tropical fruits and honey in their diet for various reasons. I think one of the problems with Paul is, he tried to be so lean all the time, and it's something you see when you get cramping and stuff like that. You see bodybuilders when they get very, very lean, they have significant problems with cramping. And I think that's more to do with that, probably just under eating, and sort of that more than anything else. I have not had fruit. I've not had honey in about at least 6 years now. And I do fine with that. And I think the thing with the thyroid is you have to realize there is a concept of thyroid resistance, just like there's insulin resistance, just like there's androgen resistance. And so sometimes what we see is a reduction in activating thyroid hormone T3, the active form. However, there's no symptoms. And, whether that was, whether he was symptomatic or not, I'm not sure. And whether he was basing it on lab values alone, which I think are dangerous. You have to have the clinical presentation with that. But I think that, there's a number of things he was doing, which I probably wouldn't have recommended that may have been a problem for his diet.
Being ultra lean is the flip side of being ultra fat. It's not a normal place for a person to be. Now, I'm not talking about, 11%, 10% body fat. But when you start getting into those single digit areas, your body doesn't like being there just as much as it doesn't like being, 50 pounds overweight. Right.
There's like I said, there's a happy medium. I think most people, it's probably leaner than most people think, but it is, certainly when you get down to the really sort of lean levels, you can run into trouble.
Plug your website again. How do you spell Revero?
You spell it Revero, so it's kind of like reverse Revero, and Revero.com. That's the name, and we just raised $5 million to build this out into a full medical platform. So we just hired several software engineers. We'll be hiring physicians and other clinicians later this year. So we'll get rolling and we'll be starting taking patients soon.
Last question, I promise. You make the best steak, and eating beef for every meal like you've got to have some tricks that make it taste good. So you cook it at a very high heat, right? You flash cook it.
Right. Yeah, I think
what's that sous thing that you use?
Well, a little sous vide. I mean, that's just a French technique. So you just basically, it's just a way to, it's basically like it's some way to reverse steer state, so you can kind of control, you know what the temperature you're going to end up. So it's a very precise way to control the temperature. I prefer a medium rare steak, so I will cook it to an internal temperature of about 125 degrees. And then I put it in that very high heat, that 1,500 degree heat, for about a minute per side. And that will, that cooking will still raise the internal temperature up to about 130, which is about a perfect medium rare. It's very simple, very reproducible. It's also if you've got a good cut of steak, you want to treat it well. There's nothing worse than ruining a nice piece of meat.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, thank you so much for being here, man.
Appreciate it, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Take care. And we will see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here. And don't forget, share the show. Share the show. Thank you. See you tomorrow.